It's 10:58 in the evening of August the 29th, 2025. This is an easily recognizable deep sky study. It is, of course, Messier 31. We're framing 110 in the lower right, and we're framing Messier 32 to the left of the core of Messier 31. This is a very nice image. I've just spent the last 2 hours trying to fix my scope after transporting it elsewhere and setting it up. And it has not been easy. I've yet to really identify what the problem is. However, what I'm really about to do tonight is to run a test of Microsoft's Snipping Tool using my older laptop. I am going to run this image for some 15 minutes to see if it'll actually save without trashing itself. And over this course of time, why not experiment with zoomage? Now, typically, I only run a study for about a minute or two at a time and then pause it. So I'm going to run several 2-minute segments, and I'm going to center and use various exposure times on this lovely set of galaxies. We just lost 110 when I increased the zoom, and now we'll get it back. So we're just about to come up on 2 minutes. I'm going to pause. This is a fabulous view, by the way. Never got a view like this in the Rev 2. And here is 2 minutes pause. All right, I just set the cooling function on the ZWO imager. This should help remove some pixelization. And what I'm going to do is another test where I actually eliminate noise reduction. Let's see what happens to the imaging. I will also center on Messier 32 and 110 as well in the course of this 15-minute test. Hopefully, you'll be hearing what I have to say throughout this experiment. So we're now at about 2 minutes and 41 seconds. I'm going to do a zoom in again. And we're going to spread Messier 31 out over the entire field. Once again, this is a 10-second exposure. However, the other aspect of this is I am using El Quattro, the f4 150 millimeter fast newt, which has a fairly large obstruction and really only collects the light of a 5, maybe a 5.5 inch scope, compared to the unobstructed Eddy, which is an f8, twice the focal ratio, 150 millimeter semi-apochromatic refractor. My big issue of the evening was setting up the Skywatcher Pro mount, the EQ6R mount. That has been the major issue using this particular scope because navigation is poor and it's very easy to muck something up. And I did that repeatedly by leaving clutches somewhat loose. Meanwhile, even though I set up the correct time and date and centered pretty much around Polaris, I was not able to get the scope to do a 3-star alignment initially with any of the stars in the middle of the finder scope field of view. Another pause. Okay, for this next segment of the next couple of minutes, I've got the cooler on, but I've eliminated noise reduction. Not sure if we're going to see much in the way of pixelization or not. That's something we're just going to have to inspect for. Once again, this is a fabulous view of Messier 31, real-time imaging, 10-second exposures using a ZWO Pro imaging system, capable of resolving details down to 0.5 arc seconds. Now, I want to point something out when we go to the smaller studies later on, like Messier 110 and Messier 32, In fact, we should see enhanced detail as we zoom in because we're using more and more pixels to actually accommodate the images. So that'll be a further experiment. It also would be a very interesting thing to see if there are any very faint galaxies somewhere in the field, although Messier 31 is throwing off so much luminosity into the atmosphere that it would obscure any like 14th and 15th magnitude galaxies. So we're now coming up on about 6 minutes of exposure time using the Snipping Tool, roughly 2 minutes in a segment, and I will pause once again and turn on noise reduction. And this time we'll center on Messier 110. What you're seeing now is me aligning Messier 110 to the center of the field, something that really can't be done in ASI live. It has to be done in ASI image, and that's because you get real-time repositioning if you drop it down to a 1 second exposure. So here we go. I think I pretty much centered it up. I'm going to pause and we're going to go back into ASI live. Okay, the image you're seeing now is a 1 second exposure using El Quattro of Messier 110. I have to turn back on the cooler every time I come back into ASI live and turn on noise reduction. So this is a view that you might get at low power. In a 1 second exposure, I consider that to be basically, on a really good night of seeing, to be a 12-inch view. The power is very low. We're operating at f4, 17%, which means I suspect we're probably 17% zoom, 100% zoom on this scope is half of 100%, which is 75x. So we're operating well below that. Let's zoom in to 100% zoom and center the image in the field. All right, not particularly happy with the quality of the image, so I'm going to play a little bit with the histogram. Brightens it. That was the left cursor slider. Completely lose the image there. So 1 second exposures are not particularly good. And I have yet to get a solid image of Messier 110 that I would consider to be a 12-inch view. However, let's go ahead and push. Oh, we're at exposure time of 0.5. So that is not, it's about an 8 or 9-inch view, but I'm not liking the histogram settings that I'm coming up with. I'm going to pause this now. We're going to push it up to 2 seconds, basically doubling the aperture from 0.5 to 2. Okay, we're now ASI live. You're seeing Messier 110. You're seeing very low power view. You're seeing the two dark bars on Messier 31. I've only really seen those in a 10-inch scope in the past. I may not have nailed down the histogram. There is a very decent view right there. And we'll run up the magnification a little bit. So we're heading for, that would be about 150x at 100%, because I know that at 100% on the on Eddy, the 150 f8 refractor, that's about 300x. So this is half of it, 150. We're getting quite a bit of extension. We're operating at 2 seconds. That should be 2 seconds should be the equivalent. Let's say let's call 0.5 for a 6-inch in this instance. So we should be operating at about 12 inches of aperture right now, or better. So that is our view of Messier 110 at 2-second exposure time. Let's go on to 10-second once again. Okay, playing with histogram, we're now up to 10 seconds exposure time. Once again, there's a delicate balance between the art and the depth of the image visible to the eye. This, of course, is, once again, 20. This is pretty arbitrary, the E-zoom. This is 20%, 30, 40, 50. We're going for 100%, and we should be getting our 150x view. I'm going to play with the histogram a little bit. That brings it out better. Quite a bit of extension of the galaxy. I can darken up the background sky a little bit by using the right histogram slider. We're at 10 seconds exposure. We're not getting good stars. We're getting some double in the stellar disks. I'm not sure if that will abate as I continue to allow it to expose. It should compensate by triangulating and overlaying the image. Let's see what it does. We're up to some 11 minutes and 30 seconds into this video. And we're still seeing the doubling of the stellar disks. So what I have learned is with Eddie in the observatory in the Losman D mount, I'm able to go up to 30 seconds without too much of a problem, exposures, and sometimes with absolute stillness, 60 seconds using the zero imager. Not so with the Skywatcher EQ6R mount, at least the way it's currently set up. So I'm going to drop back down to 5-second exposure time. See if we can eliminate these doubling of the stellar disks. Well, I have to say that it is easier to set up the histogram at 5 seconds. This is quite a very nice artistic view of Messier 110 with Messier 31 looming largely in the background. Very nice. It does look like the stars are tiny disks. The focus is pretty good. Let's go ahead and do some zoomage. Once again, pressing it up to 150x. Hopefully I can center it on the field. I would say, yeah, as a general rule, 5-second exposures are the limit using the Skywatcher mount. Now, I cannot really spend any time tracking down anything else tonight because the model is just amok and it's really not centering very well. For instance, I'm going to go ahead and center it right here on 110, and then I'm going to center on 32, and let's see where it ends up. Backing it out first. Here's our view. We expect to see Messier 32 end up right about there. Let's give it a shot. Okay, you'll note that Messier 110 was right about here. Look how far off Messier 32 is. And like I said, I'd have to go into ASI air. But let's frame these two together for a nice aesthetic shot at 50% zoom, or about 75x. So ooh, that was very peculiar. Apparently I double-clicked somewhere. All right, so here we are with Messier 31 and 32 in the field. That's about as good as I can frame them. We're now at 14 minutes and 10 seconds. This experiment, besides being able to verify how poorly modeling is for the scope right now, both mechanically, although I did center up 3 stars rather well, there's some serious mechanical alignments with the pole. But anyway, what we're seeing here is 32 and 31. And in a few seconds, I am going to stop the process of gathering the Snipping Tool image plus my voice. And I'm going to see if this video actually manages to survive on my older laptop, which uses Windows 10 instead of Windows 11. But here is a rather glorious view. And with that, I shall say, Carpe Noctem.